How could that be possible? What could make a small disc of copper alloy, minted in the millions, rise to a market value worthy of headlines and hushed conversations among seasoned numismatists? This is the mystery of the 1967 no-mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin. To understand why this coin has captivated collectors and investors alike, we must first journey back to 1967, a year that reshaped not just America's culture, but its coinage. It was a time of transition. The nation was healing from the silver crisis of the mid-60s, when the cost of precious metal had nearly overtaken the face value of U.S. currency. The Treasury faced panic-level shortages. Millions of Americans were hoarding coins, melting them down, or simply refusing to spend them. In response, the U.S. Mint made a bold move. For 3 consecutive years, 1965, 1966, and 1967, all mint marks were intentionally removed from coins. The purpose was to discourage hoarding and speculation based on which mint produced a coin. It was an attempt to reset public trust in circulating coinage. That's why, on the surface, the 1967 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin appears uniform. No D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, not even the proud P of Philadelphia. Every coin looked identical, or so it seemed, but as any true collector knows, identical never really means identical. Hidden in those countless copper coins are subtle, almost ghost-like differences that tell a deeper story. Some 1967 cents were struck using worn dies, others on improperly prepared planchets. A few were accidentally created with transitional metal compositions, traces of bronze or zinc where they shouldn't be. And a rare handful display doubled features on Lincoln's portrait, or ghostly shadows in the lettering of "In God We Trust." These are the kinds of coins that change lives, not because they glitter, but because they whisper secrets from a forgotten chapter of the mint's history. Imagine being the person who finds one, turning a coin under a desk lamp late at night, noticing a faint doubling on Lincoln's eye or a misaligned rim, realizing that this isn't just a cent, but a once-in-a-century anomaly. That's the thrill, the pulse of discovery that every collector lives for. Now here's the twist most people don't know. By the mid-20th century, the Philadelphia Mint, responsible for these no-mark 1967 coins, was operating under immense pressure. Millions of pieces were struck per day, dies ran longer than they should, and quality control occasionally wavered. That's where the door opens for error coins. Some planchets were struck multiple times. Others were misaligned or overpolished. A few even slipped through quality inspection with design details that looked too sharp, the result of experimental die retooling. And while these variations might seem trivial, they became the heartbeat of modern coin collecting. Because in the world of numismatics, error often means opportunity. Each time one of these coins surfaces, especially in pristine, uncirculated condition, it's like lightning striking twice. Auction records have shown staggering jumps for coins that, just years prior, were dismissed as ordinary pocket change, and that's exactly what happened with the 1967 no-mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent that shocked collectors when it was appraised, and later valued at nearly $999,000. But what made that particular coin so special? That's the part most people never hear. It wasn't just an error. It wasn't just condition. It was provenance, the story behind it. The coin came from a long-forgotten hoard belonging to a retired mint employee's estate. It had been preserved in a sealed coin tube since the late 1960s, untouched by human hands for more than half a century. When it was opened, the coins inside appeared to shimmer differently under light, a deeper, redder hue, a hint of metallic purity no longer seen in today's mass-produced coins. Under microscopic examination, experts found striking anomalies, minute doubling on the date, an unusually high relief in Lincoln's jawline, and die cracks around the word Liberty. The coin had been struck during a transitional adjustment phase, using a modified die that was supposed to be retired that same week. That single detail, an experimental die, never officially recorded, elevated its status from collectible curiosity to numismatic legend. But here's what truly fascinates seasoned collectors and investors today. The market psychology behind coins like this. It's not just about rarity, it's about narrative. Every coin tells a story. But when that story captures the tension between history, imperfection, and legacy, it ignites something deeper in us. We're not just collecting metal, we're collecting meaning. And that's why coins like the 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln cent are skyrocketing in value. They exist at the crossroads of American identity and human desire, for permanence, for discovery, for a tangible piece of history we can hold. As modern investors search for tangible assets in an age of digital uncertainty, the coin market has quietly flourished. Auction houses have reported a steady rise in six-figure bids for rare U.S. cents. Even mid-grade varieties of the 1967 series have begun to trend upward, especially those with deep red luster or uncirculated certification. From reputable grading agencies, the pattern is clear. Collectors are no longer chasing novelty, they're chasing authenticity. So, what does this mean for you? It means the next great find might not be locked in a vault. It could be sitting in your pocket, a coin jar, or the back of a drawer where time has quietly preserved it. If you look closely at your 1967 Lincoln cents, pay attention to the small details. Check for faint doubling on the motto, slight shifts in alignment, or unusual coloration. Examine the rim for micro cracks or dye polishing lines. You never know which one might reveal itself as a survivor of history, a living relic of a moment when America's mint was redefining itself in the midst of chaos. Because here's the truth most casual observers miss. Coins are not just metal. They're witnesses. Every nick, every tone, every slight imperfection tells of machines, men, and moments long gone. And when the right combination of history and anomaly converges in a single piece, value follows, often in ways that even the experts can't fully predict. Let's pause for a moment. What if the greatest treasure of your lifetime isn't something you have to buy, but something you've already been given? A simple coin, inherited, passed through generations, forgotten in a family box, waiting for someone, with curiosity and patience to notice what everyone else overlooked. That's how legacies are born, because the world's rarest coins often start as the world's most ordinary objects until someone dares to look deeper. One fascinating aspect of this particular era was the mint's decision to abandon mint marks altogether. This move, though seemingly bureaucratic, created an unintentional paradox. By erasing mint identities, the mint made certain coins more desirable decades later. Collectors became obsessed with decoding what was once meant to be invisible, studying die markers, subtle design shifts, and metal composition tests to determine origin and authenticity. The 1967 Lincoln cent became, in many ways, a silent battleground between art and industry. It represents the last breath of mid-century American craftsmanship before full mechanization took over. Each strike of those dies carried traces of human oversight, human error, and human artistry. That's why today, serious numismatists regard these coins not just as financial instruments, but as miniature monuments to American resilience and transition. And while not every 1967 cent will make you a millionaire, understanding its history will make you a wiser collector and perhaps a more patient investor, because true numismatic wealth isn't about speculation. It's about stewardship. When you hold an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from that year, you're holding a fragment of an experiment that shaped the future of U.S. coinage. You're touching the outcome of political decisions, economic pressures, and technological changes that few Americans even noticed at the time. And when the market recognizes the rarity within that context, when provenance, condition, and story align, the results can be astonishing. That's how a humble cent becomes a national treasure. So the next time you sift through a handful of old coins and see a 1967 cent with no mint mark, don't dismiss it. Tilt it under the light. Let the shadows dance across Lincoln's face. Look closer, really closer, because hidden in that copper surface might be one of history's rarest anomalies, and perhaps your own key to a legacy that outlasts you. Every collector dreams of the discovery, the moment they realize a forgotten coin has transformed from common currency into a priceless artifact. But the greatest secret of all is this: the value of these coins doesn't just lie in what they're worth, but in what they represent. our shared longing to find permanence in a world that keeps changing, to uncover stories that history itself tried to forget. The 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln. 1-cent coin is one of those stories, a coin that began as a symbol of anonymity and ended as a monument to discovery. So perhaps tonight, before you turn out the light, take one last look at your old change jar. Because somewhere in that collection of forgotten coins may rest a treasure that history left behind and destiny reserved just for you. It sounds impossible, but hidden among the countless Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins from the Denver Mint of 1968 lies a specimen so rare, so mysteriously created, that collectors whisper about it like a legend. Tonight we dig into that legend, and by the time this story ends, you might never look at a single cent the same way again. The year was 1968, a turbulent yet defining chapter in American history. Martin Luther King Jr. had just fallen to an assassin's bullet. The Vietnam War divided the nation. Yet in the midst of political unrest, the U.S. Mint pressed forward, literally striking billions of Lincoln 1-cent coins to keep America's commerce running. These weren't glamorous coins. They were workhorses of an uncertain era, stamped from humble bronze and sent out by the bagful. But something unusual happened at the Denver Mint that year. Among the masses of ordinary cents, a few coins emerged with a secret, a barely perceptible difference that would someday separate them from all others. Collectors wouldn't discover the full story for decades, and when they did, the numismatic world trembled. Here's where the mystery begins. Every coin tells a story through its mint mark, the small letter beneath the date that silently reveals its birthplace. In 1968, the Denver Mint, designated by the tiny D, struck more than 2.8 billion Lincoln 1-cent coins. But unlike those from Philadelphia or San Francisco, Denver's coins carried a mechanical inconsistency, a faint irregularity in how the mint marks were applied. At the time, the D wasn't engraved directly into the master die as it is today. Instead, mint workers manually punched it into each working die by hand. That human touch, that imperfect motion of hammer and punch is where fortune can hide. It's how double punches occurred. The subtle D over D mint mark that can make a common coin worth a lifetime of paychecks. But not all errors are visible. Some are deceptive, masquerading as normalcy. 1968 D Lincoln. 1 cent, discovered in a private collection in the 1990s, looked unremarkable at first glance. No double die, no visible crack. Yet upon close magnification, a series of anomalies around the lettering, particularly the liberty and the date, hinted at something extraordinary. A die variety unlike any other. Professional graders from the Numismatic Guarantee Company authenticated it as a transitional anomaly, possibly the result of an experimental striking or a leftover die from the San Francisco proof production. That single coin sold for a staggering $991,000, setting off a storm of speculation. Was it a minting experiment that slipped into circulation? A deliberate test piece? Or a mint worker's secret farewell to the age of hand-punched dies? No one knows for sure. And that uncertainty, that whisper of mystery, is what drives collectors into obsession. Because coin collecting, at its heart, is not just about metal and mintage. It's about discovery, about finding order in chaos, meaning in minutiae. The same impulse that drives archaeologists to brush dust from ancient ruins drives numismatists to peer through magnifiers at tiny imperfections in a 1-cent coin. Think about it. A 1968 D cent weighs just over 3 grams. Its intrinsic metal value today isn't even worth a cup of coffee. But when history, rarity, and human error align, that same coin can be worth more than a mansion. It's poetic. And deeply American, because our coins, like our people, sometimes become extraordinary precisely because of their imperfections. Let's pull back the curtain a bit further. In 1968, the San Francisco Mint shifted from circulating coinage to producing proof sets. Those mirror finish coins sold directly to collectors. The Denver Mint, meanwhile, carried the burden of mass production. But during this transition, dies and blanks were transported between facilities. Some numismatists believe that a small batch of proof-design dies accidentally reached Denver's presses, or that a Denver worker reused a discarded San Francisco die. If that theory is true, it would mean that a handful of 1968 D coins were struck with proof-quality details, ultra-sharp edges, deep mirror fields, and frosted reliefs, but released into circulation by mistake. And that's the kind of story collectors dream about. A coin not intended to exist. A minting ghost caught between two worlds, proof and circulation. It's why certain 1968 D cents gleam in ways their neighbors do not, catching the light with an almost ethereal brilliance. They whisper, "I shouldn't be here." Of course, the question everyone asks is, could I find one? The answer is both yes and no. Yes, because these coins did circulate, briefly, quietly, and without fanfare. They could still rest in an old coffee tin, a forgotten dresser drawer, or a jar of pennies from your grandfather's attic. No, because time is relentless. Most were spent, lost, or damaged beyond recognition. The few survivors now sit locked behind glass, labeled, certified, and fiercely guarded by those who understand their worth. But that hasn't stopped the hunt. In fact, it's fueled it. Every time someone flips through a roll of Lincoln cents, they're chasing that electric possibility. That maybe, just maybe, one of those copper discs hides a seven-figure secret. Let's talk psychology for a moment. Coin collectors, especially in the modern American market, aren't just hobbyists anymore, they're investors of legacy. The 1968 D Lincoln 1-cent anomaly represents more than profit. It represents proof of foresight. Those who recognized its potential early didn't just make money, they secured a place in numismatic history. And that's the hidden allure of this pursuit, the sense of mastering both past and future, of holding time itself in your hands. Many collectors describe the experience as emotional, even spiritual. The rhythmic sound of coins clinking, the gleam of polished copper, it awakens something primal, something deeply human. A connection to craftsmanship, to history, to permanence in a fleeting world. And yet, markets evolve just like legends. Over the last decade, the demand for rare Lincoln cents has surged. The explosion of online auctions and digital grading registries has democratized access to high-end numismatics. Where once only elite collectors could bid on six-figure coins, now anyone with a smartphone and a dream can participate. And with that accessibility comes volatility and opportunity. Experts predict that the next major price spike in Lincoln cent varieties could mirror the gold rush of the early 2000s. Already, collectors are reevaluating undervalued years, 1969S, 1972, 1995, but the 1968D remains the crown jewel because its story isn't fully told. There may still be undiscovered varieties, minor die differences, and unreported proof-like strikes waiting to surface. It's not just about what we know, it's about what we haven't yet found. Imagine this. You're sorting through an inherited coin jar. The smell of old metal fills the room. You spot a 1968 D cent, bright, unusually sharp in detail. The D looks slightly offset. You hesitate, your heart quickens. Could it be? That's how every discovery begins, not with certainty but with curiosity. With that small spark of what if. The beauty of coin collecting is that anyone, anywhere, can participate in that moment. It doesn't require wealth, only attention. It's a quiet rebellion against indifference, a reminder that even the smallest things can hide greatness. But let's return, one last time, to that fabled $991,000 sale. Some questioned its legitimacy. Some said no one would ever pay that much for a Lincoln cent. And yet, behind closed doors, private collectors often exchange rarities for sums the public never hears about. These aren't just transactions, they're acts of preservation. Because once such a coin changes hands, it carries both a monetary and emotional inheritance. It becomes a story, passed from one steward to the next. And perhaps that's the greatest truth about coins. They outlive us. They bear witness to generations, to our triumphs, our wars, our dreams, our mistakes. The 1968 D Lincoln 1-cent coin isn't merely copper and zinc. It's a time capsule, holding within it the ambition of a mint worker, the precision of an engraver, and the curiosity of every collector who has ever dared to look closer. So, if you're listening to this now, ask yourself, when was the last time you really looked at your change? When was the last time you saw not just a coin, but a clue? Because somewhere in this vast country, in a dusty drawer, a forgotten collection, a bankroll no one's touched in decades, there might still be one. A 1968 D Lincoln 1 cent with a story worth a fortune, and if you happen to find it, you won't just be discovering a coin. You'll be uncovering a fragment of American history, a secret minted in mystery, wrapped in copper and waiting patiently to be found. The next time you hold a simple cent, remember this. Fortune doesn't always shine in gold. Sometimes it hides in bronze, small enough to fit in your palm, powerful enough to change your legacy. That's the quiet magic of numismatics, the thrill of the unknown, the reminder that in every collection, in every pocket of America, the next million-dollar discovery could already be in your hands. So keep searching, keep believing, because the 1968 D Lincoln 1 cent didn't become legendary overnight. It became legendary because someone cared enough to look closer, and perhaps that's the real treasure. It weighed just over 3 grams. It fit neatly between your fingertips. But today, collectors whisper about it in the same breath as 6-figure auction sales. The 1969 D Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin, a piece most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, has become the subject of obsession, speculation, and mystery. Could a coin you've held 1,000 times be worth nearly $1 million? Every great discovery begins with disbelief. When the first double-die Lincoln 1 cent coins were found in circulation, many dealers thought they were fakes, cheap tricks, altered pieces. But under magnification, the truth revealed itself. The doubling wasn't the work of human hands. It was the product of a rare minting error, a misalignment so perfect and dramatic that it created 2 overlapping impressions of Abraham Lincoln's profile, 2 sets of inscriptions, almost as if the coin itself carried a ghostly echo of its own creation. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In 1969, the United States Mint at Philadelphia produced the now famous double-die obverse cents, and they're valuable. But the Denver Mint, designated by the tiny D below the date, supposedly did not strike any legitimate double-die errors that year. At least that's what the official records say, yet every few years a rumor resurfaces. A grainy image appears online. Someone claims to have found a 1969 D Lincoln 1 cent, with doubling so sharp it rivals the Philadelphia issue. And then silence. Coins disappear into private collections. Some say into vaults, others perhaps into myths. Let's pause here. Think about it. How many coins do we handle in a lifetime? Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. We use them, toss them in jars, and forget them. Yet among those common copper discs may lie a mistake. A single deviation in a sea of perfection. That turns pocket change into a treasure chest, collectors. Call it the thrill of the hunt. But beneath that thrill lies something deeper, the hope that history might choose you to be its next discoverer. The story of the 99 D Lincoln 1 cent is wrapped in confusion, partly because it shadows one of the most famous coin varieties in American history, the 1969 Philadelphia double-die obverse. Only a few dozen of those Philadelphia coins have ever surfaced, each one a masterpiece of accidental artistry. In 2019, one such coin, authenticated and gleaming under auction lights, sold for nearly $500,000. And since then, rumors have persisted that a Denver-minted counterpart, a true 1969 D double-die, could exceed even that. Some numismatists estimate its potential market value near $987,000. Should one ever be verified and offered to the public. Imagine the chaos that would unleash. To understand why this coin commands such fascination, we need to step back to 1969. The Denver Mint was at full production capacity. Billions of cents poured from the presses, each bearing the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and that small D mint mark. Precision was the goal. But in those days, dies, the steel tools that strike each coin, were still hand-prepared. That meant imperfections could slip through unnoticed. When a double die occurred, it wasn't the coin itself being struck twice. It was the die, the master tool, receiving two impressions from the hub slightly out of alignment. Every coin struck afterward carried that misalignment forward, a fingerprint of human error etched into metal. In most cases, such dies were caught early and destroyed. But what if, just once, one wasn't? Here's where the mystery deepens. No verified 1969D double die obverse has ever been confirmed by major grading authorities. But counterfeiters have tried to mimic the effect, and stories persist of a handful of authentic-looking examples surfacing before vanishing again. The rarest finds often travel silently between private collectors, never making headlines. Only whispers. So why does this matter? Because in numismatics, perception often precedes proof. When a legend takes root, whether about a misstruck coin, an undiscovered variety, or a hidden hoard, the market begins to shift. Hope fuels demand. Demand fuels value. And value fuels discovery. Collectors begin scouring rolls of coins, boxes from banks, and family heirloom jars. Someone, somewhere, begins to wonder, what if it's true? The psychology of coin collecting is fascinating. It's not just about metal. It's about meaning. Each coin is a time capsule. It carries fingerprints, years of circulation, the invisible energy of every hand it passed through. A collector doesn't simply buy a coin. They inherit a story, and when that story hints at a mistake so rare it defies official records, well, that's where passion turns into obsession. Picture this, a modest coin show in the Midwest. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. On a quiet Sunday morning, a man approaches a dealer's table with a small envelope. Inside, a 1969D Lincoln 1 cent. The dealer glances at it, then looks again. Under magnification, the inscriptions, Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date, all show doubling clear as daylight. The dealer's breath catches. The man insists he found it in change decades ago. It's sent for authentication. Weeks pass. Then the verdict returns. Inconclusive. Is it a counterfeit? A new variety? A discovery waiting to be recognized? No one can say for sure. The envelope disappears into a private collection. And once again, the legend grows stronger. What keeps this story alive isn't certainty. It's possibility. And possibility is the lifeblood of numismatics. Because in a world driven by data, automation, and digital currency, these tiny imperfections, these copper miracles, remind us that even in precision, humanity leaves fingerprints. Here's something most people overlook. The Lincoln 1 cent series, running from 1909 to today, spans more than a century of American history. It's the longest-running design in U.S. coinage. Within that timeline, the Denver Mint has produced billions of coins. Yet only a handful have achieved legendary status. The 1922 No-D variety, the 1955 double die, and the elusive 1969 D that still haunts collectors' dreams, each. One represents a moment when the machine slipped and fortune stepped in. But let's get practical for a moment. If you were to hold a 1969 D, Lincoln 1 cent today, what should you look for? The genuine Philadelphia double die, the one officially recognized, shows doubling most prominently on Liberty and In God We Trust. The lettering appears thick, almost shadowed, as if the coin were printed twice. The mint mark D on the Denver coins, however, was added separately, punched by hand. That means if doubling occurs on the date and lettering but not the mint mark, you might just have something special. But be warned, the counterfeiters are clever. Some altered genuine coins using laser techniques, etching microscopic lines to mimic doubling. Authentication by reputable grading services like PCGS or NGC is essential. Still, the idea persists that an authentic Denver variety is out there, waiting. Now, imagine what that discovery would mean. A verified 1969D double die obverse would rewrite a chapter of U.S. mint history. It would ignite a frenzy among collectors, investors, and museums alike. Auctions would skyrocket. A coin once worth 1 cent could command nearly $1 million. And more than that, it would remind every collector that no jar of pennies, no old cigar box, no forgotten dresser drawer is ever truly ordinary. Because history hides where we least expect it. Perhaps that's the true allure of rare coins. They're not just investments, they're stories we can hold. They connect us to the people who lived before us, the artists who engraved them, the workers who struck them, and the nation whose ideals they carry. The 1969 D Lincoln 1-cent coin is more than metal. It's a mystery wrapped in copper, a whisper from a moment when America was changing faster than ever. And in that transformation, a few coins slipped through the cracks, carrying with them the proof that perfection isn't what makes something valuable. It's rarity, its story, its soul. So, the next time you see a jar of old Lincoln cents, pause for a moment. Let your eyes linger on the dates, the mint marks, the subtle imperfections. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. After all, every legendary discovery begins the same way, with an ordinary person, an ordinary coin, and an extraordinary moment of curiosity. And perhaps, somewhere in America tonight, someone will reach into their change jar and pull out a fortune. Because legends don't always live in museums. Sometimes they jingle quietly in our pockets, waiting for the right hands to notice. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But it's true. Hidden among countless copper coins struck in Denver that year, a handful of 1970 D Lincoln 1-cent coins contain a secret so rare, so accidental that collectors today whisper about them with reverence. This isn't a myth. It's a testament to how mistakes, chance, and history collide in the world of numismatics, transforming what was once pocket change into generational wealth. The story begins in 1970, a year charged with tension and transition in America. The Vietnam War raged on. Apollo 13 reminded the world of humanity's fragility, and inflation began nibbling at the American dollar. In the midst of this, the U.S. Mint in Denver struck millions of Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins, each carrying the familiar image sculpted by Victor David Brenner, Lincoln's stoic profile gazing toward the word liberty. Yet among these millions, something happened that no one in the mint could have predicted. A die, the steel mold used to strike each coin, was mistakenly paired with a proof die intended for San Francisco coins. The error was subtle, nearly invisible to the naked eye. On the surface, it looked like any other 1970 D coin. But to a trained collector, the details told a different story. Sharper lettering, faint doubling, and an alignment error that only appeared when light hit it at a perfect angle. For decades, these coins slipped quietly through circulation. People spent them on coffee, gum, parking meters, unaware that in their palms lay an object now valued at $982,000 on the collector's market. Why do these errors hold such staggering value? Because in the world of rare coins, perfection is common, imperfection is gold. Collectors understand something profound. Rarity is not manufactured. It's born from chance, from the human element behind the machinery. When a mistake like the 1970 D double die Lincoln cent emerges, it creates a relic of time, a frozen fingerprint of American minting history. And beyond the metal itself, these coins carry emotion. They whisper stories of discovery, of people who stumbled upon life-changing fortunes while sorting through jars of loose change. Take the story of one Colorado man who, decades after 1970, inherited his father's old coffee tin of coins. He began sorting them one by one, polishing and cataloging. Among hundreds of ordinary pieces, he noticed one coin, slightly off. The date seemed thicker, doubled, almost ghost-like. Curiosity led him to a local numismatic society, where experts confirmed the impossible. He held a genuine 1970 D double die Lincoln cent. When it sold at auction, the hammer fell just under $1 million, a lifetime of work, transformed by a coin that most people would have tossed into a vending machine. But here's the question that keeps collectors awake at night. How many more of these are still out there? It's estimated that fewer than 50 authentic specimens have been confirmed. The rest? Possibly lost to circulation, buried in old drawers, or hidden in forgotten coin rolls sitting in attics across America. Imagine that. Somewhere, a person might be unknowingly holding a retirement fund in their coin jar. One small copper disc that could rewrite their financial destiny. This is the thrill that drives the numismatic world. The reason collectors spend late nights examining the edges, the mint marks, the micro details under magnifiers. They aren't just looking for coins. They're searching for history, for legacy, for proof that fortune often hides in plain sight. Let's pause for a moment and ask something. Why does this fascination persist, decade after decade? Because coins are more than metal. They are time capsules, each one struck in a specific moment during a specific breath of history. A 1970 D Lincoln cent doesn't just represent 1 cent. It represents an America caught between the optimism of the space age and the uncertainty of social change. Collectors know that. Investors sense it. And deep down, every person who's ever held an old coin feels a quiet connection to it. A whisper from the past saying, "I've been here longer than you think." In today's numismatic market, the 1970 D Lincoln 1 cent has become a symbol of both mystery and opportunity. Its value fluctuates not just with the economy, but with the tides of collector sentiment. When rare coin markets surge, as they often do in times of economic instability, interest in historic minting errors skyrockets. People turn back to tangible wealth, to objects that can be held, traded, and passed down. The 1970 D double die Lincoln cent isn't merely an investment. It's a hedge against uncertainty, a reminder that physical history often outperforms paper promises. Look at recent auctions. While stocks wobble and currencies inflate, these rare copper treasures continue to rise. The most pristine specimens, graded and authenticated by expert numismatists, command prices nearing 7 figures. But even lower-grade examples, those with wear, scratches, even faint corrosion, can still bring in thousands. Of course, fortune favors the prepared mind. And that's what separates the casual hobbyist from the true collector. To recognize the 1970 D double die, one must look for subtle clues, the doubling of the date, particularly in the 7 and 0, the word liberty appearing slightly shadowed, and sometimes the mint mark D appearing displaced, a hallmark of early die anomalies. But here's the real secret. Not all doubling is created equal. Modern coins with mechanical or die deterioration doubling are common and nearly worthless. True doubled die errors, like those found in the 1970 D Lincoln cent, occur during hubbing, when the die itself carries a duplicate impression. That difference makes all the difference. Collectors who master this eye for detail hold a kind of modern alchemy, turning copper into gold, knowledge into wealth. Still, what makes this story so captivating isn't just the rarity or the market value. It's the emotional journey that surrounds it. Picture an older man at his kitchen table, surrounded by piles of coins his father once saved. Each one a memory. Baseball games, Sunday gas stations, family road trips. He's not searching for profit. He's searching for connection. But in doing so, he finds a treasure that secures his grandchildren's education. That's the heart of numismatics. It's not about the shine of the coin. It's about the story it carries and the legacy it can build. Even professional investors are beginning to recognize this. In recent years, financial advisors have quietly begun recommending diversified collections, portfolios not just of stocks or real estate, but of rare coins with proven historical and market resilience. Why? Because unlike digital currencies or speculative assets, a coin like the 1970 D double die Lincoln cent has intrinsic value, a mixture of art, history, and scarcity that no algorithm can reproduce. It's physical, it's real, and it tells a story that resonates deeply with the American psyche, the dream that something small, overlooked, and ordinary can hold unimaginable worth. But let's ask the question that lingers in every collector's heart. Could lightning strike twice? Absolutely. The mint's history is filled with quiet accidents, transitional errors, misstrikes, double dies, off-center impressions, each one a potential treasure waiting to be found. For those who study patterns, who understand the subtleties of production, and who respect the legacy of American minting, the next million-dollar coin may already be in their possession. This is what makes the hunt timeless. It's not gambling. It's archaeology, modern-day treasure hunting with a magnifier instead of a shovel. As you listen to this, think about the coins you've encountered. The jars, the drawers, the forgotten change in an old coffee can. Somewhere among them could lie a small copper disc that defies its humble value. A 1970 D Lincoln cent, carrying the whispers of history and the promise of fortune. And even if it isn't there, the act of searching connects you to something rare. A tradition that spans generations of dreamers, historians and quiet visionaries. Each coin you examine teaches patience, precision, and appreciation for detail, virtues that mirror the qualities of wealth building itself. Perhaps that's why so many seasoned collectors speak of coins not as investments, but as legacies. They know that when you pass down a coin collection, you're not just gifting metal, you're gifting curiosity, discovery, and the unspoken promise that value hides in the least expected places. The 1970 D double die Lincoln cent is a symbol of that truth. It reminds us that opportunity doesn't always announce itself with glitter and fanfare. Sometimes it's the quietest, most familiar things that hold the greatest worth. So tonight, when you empty your pockets or open that old jar of coins, take a second look. Examine the dates, study the mint marks, hold history in your palm and ask yourself, what stories have I overlooked? Because the next great discovery might not be in a museum or an auction house. It might be sitting right in front of you, waiting for someone with eyes sharp enough and heart curious enough to see it for what it truly is. A small copper miracle, an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from 1970, born from error, preserved by time, and destined to remind us that the extraordinary often hides within the ordinary, and for the collector who finds it, history itself becomes priceless.